Hello and welcome to the Golden Wheel Tavern. It's so good to have you all back now that the holidays have passed. Although winter is starting to set in finally, it's taken its time to settle in around here around the tavern, but that's because it's just so warm and cozy all the time here. So that's the way it is. Okay, bye. Have a good day. Anyways, speaking of warm and cozy, why don't we get a drink mixed up? Kick it off to the bartender.
Okay. So today I have for you the fabled, holy, legendary, miraculous, golden, quest-ending, world-saving MacGuffin elixir, also known as the FHLMGQEWSME. This makes 2 drinks, just beware. 2 ounces of honey brandy, 1 ounce mango vodka, 1 ounce sweet vermouth, 1 ounce orange liqueur, some orange sherbet that was put in the shaker instead of ice, gold shimmer, split between 2 cups, and then top with a can of ginger ale, 1 can for the 2 drinks.
Bright, sweet. It has a slight undercurrent of there's a little bit of something there that rings more to me as victorious rather than just happy and bright. Because this is an audio format, you can't see this, but the bartender is currently shining a light directly on their drink so they can see the gold shimmering around in their drink. Really, as you stir it, you can see the motion and whatnot. If you've ever seen those fluids that have a bunch of essentially just glitter in them so that you can see movement within the fluid, it's like that. And it looks very nice. It definitely does give fabled, holy, legendary, miraculous, golden, quest-ending, world-saving MacGuffin elixir vibes. And the flavor is bright and victorious. It has those citrus, it has that sweetness, but it still has enough the dryness of the alcohol, like I said, to read as victory rather than just joy. Bartender is currently looking up a different liqueur that specifically does that.
I was making sure it was that one.
That specifically has the stuff in it so that you can see the motion in the liquid.
No, it never did apparently.
Oh.
I swear to God, it used to.
Thrilling audio.
It's a different one.
Oh, okay.
Called Viniq.
Okay.
VINIQ. Which has shimmer.
Okay.
I thought it was hypnotic. I was wrong.
You were wrong. Anyways, like I said, bright, joyous, victorious. Pretty good drink. Now, on to the Tales from the Tavern's tables. This is our D&D group that we talk about often because our other group, scheduling is hard.
It's not even scheduling. Week after week when we're supposed to play, someone's been plague-stricken.
Someone's been plague-stricken, or it's holidays, or somebody doesn't respond for 3 hours when we could have played BG3.
Not even, because that one, before the person who wasn't responding, before that even happened, one of the other ones was like, yeah, I ate food even though I had a sore throat, now it's worse and I want to sleep. Remember?
Yeah.
So, plague-stricken and holidays.
But our other group has still met regularly because we're all best friends forever.
Amen.
Amen. So, that group, our D&D group, met up. And we had another kind of there was no combat, it was just social interaction. Hey, buddy.
He's got some important shit to tell you.
Anyways, this episode was more of a social one, interaction between our characters, sort of upkeep in regards to our characters. So another downtime episode, but something dramatic happened this episode. Something life-changing. But we'll get to that in just a second. One of our characters completely respec their entire character.
Yeah! They withers.
But it didn't cost them 100 gold. So, one of our characters, the druid monk, got a wooden arm. There's a long story involving a magic item, and then it was like a staff, and then it replaced their arm, and then they beseeched the entity that was their new arm for more power in order to protect those they care about. The entity whom they beseeched agreed, but then because they made a pact with a greater entity for power, they were stripped of all their other power and now instead are a 12th level warlock. So while respecking freely is not a good option necessarily for your players, if there is a good reason Especially like this here, they're respecing into Warlock, which makes sense. I can understand respecing. Otherwise, it's always a good idea to give story reasons for why your character starts multi-classing. And I think the DM did a good job of setting this up to give the player that option without forcing them into it. Last thing you want to do is, and you hear these horror stories all the time, of just like players playing and the DM like, I want you to go into this class. So I'm going to give you these opportunities. I'm going to have this angel of pain show up to you and tell you to become a cleric that worships that angel. And then your character says no. And then you're like, okay, the angel shows up again and says, if you do not worship me, I will kill you. And the player says no. And then the DM kills the player. Don't force changes onto your party, but you can give them the opportunity, and that's always a fun thing, even if they say no.
I will say I do think it's really funny if you just have a player being harassed by some minor god who's like, please be my cleric. And your player just keeps going, no thanks.
Right, and in that case, you're giving them the opportunity, but you aren't punishing them for not taking it.
No.
Now, the world-changing, world-bending, dramatic, party-altering thing that happened is one of our characters got a new spell only for flavor reasons.
No, that's not the dramatic changing.
Oh yeah, no, that's the dramatic world-changing thing.
Nope.
We have a character, I won't say whose it is,
Yours.
that often writes that... I won't say whose it is, that often writes letters home to their grandma, to their grandmama.
Yours.
Won't say whose it is, and they often write letters home, and the DM gave them a spell that's essentially like sending, but it ties into their family lore of animating objects. They animate a paper airplane and throw it, and then it just flies to the recipient, which is their grandmama. So that's the world-bending, world-changing dramatic thing that happened, and I won't say whose character it is that this happened to,
yours.
But it will forever alter the course of history in this campaign.
It's yours, and that's not the world-changing ending adjective thing that happened.
Also, this is a good example of something I feel strongly about in Dungeons & Dragons, which is if it's just for flavor, it's A-okay. Like, if you know me, like the bartender does, I enjoy my rules, right? We did an episode about the rules in the DMG that you probably haven't read that I have because I'm better than you, obviously. So we did an episode all about that, or rather, I did an episode and then you walked in.
Yeah, and don't worry, guys. When he said that he's better than you, I did give you a knowing look that we could share.
I also will give you a knowing look because I know that I'm not better than all of you, but if it's for flavor, I don't really care. Like, do whatever you want. If for some reason any of you listening end up being in a campaign of mine, that's my number one rule. You don't need to ask me for something that's just flavor. If you try to use it mechanically and you didn't ask me about it, that's not okay. But if it's just for flavor, like your character is missing an arm and wields a sword in their tail instead, don't really care. As long as you aren't trying to make it mechanically unique.
Yeah. We'll get back to the world-changing thing that actually happened in just a second. I will say there's a person I talk to with at work about D&D, not in our D&D group.
Yeah.
And I will say she comes up with a lot of fun, interesting flavor things. Or like some of them. One of them really pissed off the group that she's in because the group that she's in was like, no, guns aren't real in D&D. Well, the DM wasn't like that, but all the players were, and the DM was actually like, yeah, no, that's fine. You can flavor the crossbow stats as a gun.
Or you can just use the gun stats in the Dungeon Master's Workshop for DMG.
I believe it was something about damage levels or something. I don't know if the damage levels are the same for them, but yeah.
I could check, but it's all the way over there.
It's all the way over there.
I could check, but it's all the way on here.
It's all the way on there. The other fun one was a centaur monk, but instead of punching with hands, using the hooves. And it doesn't change the damage at all. It's just fun.
I could check, but it's all the way here.
All the way over there.
All the way on my desktop.
Anyways, the world-changing adjective that I don't remember thing was that we got a coffee elemental. Oh,
we did get a coffee elemental.
Yeah, we got one of our players, won't say who's, mine.
Mine.
Invented a coffee elemental. Just made one.
Just made a coffee elemental.
While trying to make bombs.
But at least there's a coffee elemental now.
It's the size of a toddler.
It's the size of a toddler because you won't let it get any bigger.
I don't want it to go into battle and die.
Well, then
People
just
don't send their toddlers into battle.
Just don't bring it into battle.
I'm trying to figure out how to harness some of its powers into bombs.
And once again, that's the DM allowing you to go expand on this idea you've decided, which is to make bombs.
Yep.
And also this thing of potions.
Yeah, the
And
potion thing that they threw in.
Yeah. And expand it out into a full-fledged thing that really engages you as a player. If you can take the crazy ideas your players have and expand on them, that's going to really engage the player. Because the player's like, yes, my ideas. I can do things.
I will say, in battle, I've probably used a bomb once, and I've mostly just been making them and selling them because my character sells weapons for a living.
Weapons of war!
Weapons of battle.
While being best friends with a person whose entire personality is, I heal the sick and wounded.
I'm giving you a job.
I already have it. There's a miasma. There are monsters.
We can bomb the monsters.
And innocent civilians nearby.
They aren't near the monsters.
What if the monsters are attacking them?
They aren't.
Oh, never mind. Everybody's safe from. There's no monsters. They don't ever attack anyone. Nobody ever got attacked by pumas ever.
Pumas aren't monsters. You just have a
They're
phobia.
in the monster manual.
So are dogs.
And dogs are monsters.
No, you just have a phobia.
Hold monster works on dogs.
Cool. Only if your DM is a monster themselves.
Are you saying the spell hold monster shouldn't affect dogs?
And cats.
And cats?
But only the domesticated kind.
Oh, okay.
That should, those ones should only be affected by hold person.
Oh, okay. The headache you give me sometimes.
I can continue.
No,
migraine.
we're moving on to the Tales from the Tavern's Tables, which is not the actual name of the segment. Sorry. I'm going to leave this one, just because I want to complain about it.
Okay. Do you want to complain about that first?
No, because it's related to our second thing.
Okay.
Or rather, our first thing. Which, disclaimer before we start, as you may have been able to guess by our brew, and also this episode's name, we're going to be talking about the hero's journey. Both of us are aware of how deeply flawed both the hero's journey and its creator is. John Campbell has been known for being a Nazi apologist and a couple other terrible things. One of the main things was he was like, no, women can't be heroes, especially in regards to the hero's journey.
Well, obviously not. Then they'd have to be a lesbian for women as temptress.
Yeah, exactly.
Lesbians aren't real.
So while the hero's journey and John Campbell are flawed, it is useful as a literary analysis tool, and in fact we will be going over the newer, more accepted version that was done by, what's his name, like Jason... No, sorry, I had completely wrong. Christopher Vogler, who did a sort of rework.
The woman-hating Christopher Vogler who got rid of woman as temptress from the hero's journey.
The person who made it make more sense rather than John Campbell, who was like, these 17 steps apply to every story all of the time. I don't care if they don't apply, I'm going to ignore the characters it doesn't apply to, such as ignoring Coyote in, I want to say Navajo myth, which is kind of a big thing because Coyote's huge in Navajo myth.
He would love Museum of Creative Design.
Yeah, he probably
Shout
would.
out Museum of Creative Design. Nothing you have on your grounds makes sense.
Yeah, troublemaking character was nevertheless one of the most important and revered characters in Navajo mythology. Joseph Campbell, went through a famous Navajo story and then legitimately just, ignored Coyote in the entire story because he couldn't justify Coyote in his monomyth. He took basically one of the characters known for, who was introduced as, having created basically the entire world, which is she's just an old granny character to make it fit his monomyth. Joseph Campbell, not a great dude, but the hero's journey is still useful. So we know hero's journey isn't perfect, and in fact, we will be tearing it apart as we go through it. But brief history or brief description, what is the hero's journey?
It's a set of events used to describe kind of like the plot line that the hero takes throughout a story.
Very basic description, but it works for what we're going for. You know, a series of steps the heroes go through. And you see it in a lot of literature. But the main thing is that it's going to be a discovery of the external. So they're going to be seeing something new about the world around them. It's inherently extroverting. It's going to be a person pushing outwards against the world around them rather than necessarily them changing from within. And it brings a resolution to the world around them rather than the resolution being their own internal conflict. Now, the hero's journey is divided into 3 sections and then a bunch of steps that add up to, in the version we'll be discussing, 12 steps. Essentially, there's 3 acts. Act 1 is departure, Act 2 is initiation, Act 3 is the return. Now, quick note, those 3 acts, while researching this topic, I found a single, video that was discussing the hero's journey that referred to those 3 acts having come from an earlier thing called either the medicine journey or the shaman journey or the shamanistic journey. And the only lead I had to go on was a guy's name, which his name is extremely difficult. Mircea Eliade or Mircea Eliade. It's a weird name. There was no way it was spelled. I tried so hard to find literally anything on the medicine journey or the shamanistic journey or shamanic journey, even breaking out Google Scholar. And it seems like if I want to cover that at all, I'd need to buy a book and read it, and I'm not doing that. So sorry, I won't cover the shaman journey or the medicine journey, other than the fact that the idea behind it is hero finds out there's a problem they cannot solve with the tools they have. They travel into the new world or the world beyond or something to find the tools to solve the problem. They come back and they solve the problem with the new tools they have found. And that's the same as the 3 acts in the hero's journey. Departure, initiation, resolution. But I spent so long, so many Google searches, even breaking out Google Scholar, couldn't really find anything. I moved on.
Yep, and since this is an anti-reading bar, just know we will never ever read a book for any episode of this podcast. Ever. Anti-reading. Anti-reading. Anti-reading.
What about the DMG?
That's hardly reading.
The
People
PHP?
don't read those. They open them up and look for the specific thing they need.
This bar is not actually anti-reading.
Yes, it is. Don't listen to him. Reading's bad. Don't do it. It'll rot your eyes.
You need to get started on. Anyways, so moving on to the steps in the hero's journey. Actually, you know what? First, we should discuss briefly why we're even discussing this. The hero's journey can be applied to your D&D games.
D&D games are full of heroes, and most of the time they go on journeys.
Yeah, basically that's it. So this is a guide for DMs to create an interesting arc, especially if you have a defined start and end to your campaign. If it's an open-ended campaign, this is a lot harder to apply. You could be stuck on step 6 for a very long time.
Apply it to character arcs.
Apply it to character arcs. That's a good way to do it. So, let's break down these as we go along and how to apply them. The first step to the hero's journey is the ordinary world. You establish the status quo. You establish something familiar to the characters, probably familiar to the players, since we're doing TTRPGs, probably familiar to the players as well.
Like a
you
tavern.
meet in a tavern. Yes. In a tavern, in a small, quaint village. Simple. Yeah. Then you have the call to adventure, which is going to be, I don't know, someone bursts into the bar and is like, help, help, my chickens are being eaten by zombies.
Or a dragon attacks the bar.
A dragon attacks the bar. Or a dragon attacks the chickens and somebody runs in going, help, help! My chickens are being eaten by dragons!
Or zombies attack a dragon in the bar.
And
the bar is for undead people.
A dragon runs in and goes, help, help! I'm being eaten by zombies! And the zombies go, yeah, you came to our town. What did you expect?
Or depending on the campaign, chickens are attacking the zombies.
And the zombies come in and go, I'm breathing my hair. So, that's the call to adventure. That motivates the characters in order to take up the adventure. Now, we already mentioned the hero's journey is deeply flawed. This is a step that in TTRPGs you're probably likely to skip, which is the refusal of the call. This is, you see it in, of course you see it in media, it's the hero's journey. The protagonist, is introduced to the supernatural or something that they need to solve, and they refuse to go on the journey. Because of course that's going to risk life, limb, health, their family, all their friends. So it's going to risk all that. They might try to refuse, and then there's consequences for that. This is when, if there is a stoic masculine figure in the main character's life, they die. They die of the consequences of whatever the call to adventure was. Or the main character's village gets burned down. Or
their dragons get eaten by chickens.
Or their chickens get eaten by zombies.
Or their zombies get eaten by dragons.
And everyone dies to the beholder. The end.
Life's a circle.
The circle of the hero's journey.
Refusal of the call does happen in D&D adventures sometimes, and typically you have to take that player aside and say, listen, we're playing this game because we all want to go on a journey. Your character telling the others in the group, let's not leave no matter the circumstances, is kind of not vibing with what the rest of the characters want to do. Maybe let's work together to create a character that wants to go on an adventure.
And that's a meeting with the mentor. Which is the next step. Meeting with the mentor is also one that sometimes you skip, especially in TTRPGs, because you're kind of already in the fantastic world. So meeting with the mentor might be meeting with the quest giver, or might be meeting with, like, Elminster, or meeting with some sort of guiding figure to point you in a general direction.
Like a general.
You do have to be careful with this, DMs. Your mentor should not be a DM PC. Do not have the mentor be your character from the last campaign and have them be the be-all, end-all savior of the party. If you want a minute and a half of us talking about different ways you can have your mentor show up in your campaign, well, subscribe to the Patreon, because that's what we did for about a minute and a half. Came up with different ways of making a weird mentor for your party. Meeting with the mentor is going to provide the party with their guide into this new world. This is going to just be usually an NPC that kind of guides the party in a specific direction. Honestly, it doesn't need to be a mentor. Crossing the first threshold. This is probably going to be when your party first enters a dungeon and gets shot by an arrow from a goblin. But this is going to be stepping into the world in which the players really first get to be like, oh, this is dangerous, this is fantastic, and there is something bigger going on here.
Yeah. This is when your players start traveling with that caravan they're supposed to protect.
Yes. Either that, or it's when the caravan gets attacked by a bunch of bandits and a Rakshasa steals a specific book from the caravan your party is protecting, but they don't see the Rakshasa stealing the book because he's invisible.
Who specifically are you calling out with this?
Me.
Okay.
But most of you listeners will never know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about now.
You know.
Thanks for that information.
There you go. That information informed you on what I'm talking about.
Can't wait for that campaign.
It'll eventually happen.
Someday.
If that group ever meets up again.
Ever at all.
Which
is so sad, because the beginning of the campaign in that one kind of follows the hero's journey.
Yeah.
You did skip refusal of the call because they didn't give you the option to refuse the call.
Yes, but there was ordinary world call to adventure, refusing the call, meeting with the mentor, and then crossing the first threshold, which means we move on to the bulk of almost any story, almost any TTRPG, tests, allies, and enemies.
Yes.
This is going to be gathering your allies, going through multiple trials, collecting pieces of the MacGuffin, figuring out who the big BG is. save the tieflings, defeat the goblins, ruin a guy's immortality.
Help the hag survivors. Save Marina.
Gather your allies.
Find Halcyon. Confront Kaga.
Consider Auntie Ethel's deal.
Help the strange ox.
Talk to Mole.
Save Thrumbo.
Decide Thrumbo's fate.
Find... what's his name? The old guy who was a paladin.
Zevlor.
Yeah, find Zevlor.
Find Duke Older Ravengard.
Rescue Zariel's asset.
Anyways... Those are all test allies and enemies. Honestly, majority of the story is going to be test allies and enemies. Mm-hmm. Now, while we're in test allies and enemies, that's going to fall mostly into Campbell's, I know, bad person, but we're going to mention some of his work, The Road of Trials, but also it typically falls into the meeting with the goddess and woman as the temptress.
Yeah, woman is temptress.
Yeah.
That's going to be my next Halloween costume.
So, woman as temptress is going to be the hero faces temptations. Mm-hmm. And basically, they have to come over their temptations to, like, not continue with this, right? Are they being offered gold? Are they, like, realizing that they might not be able to do this? Do they just want to go home? Do they want to just push it all away and leave? Etc. You're going to have temptation there, which can be useful for a narrative device. Just don't use it too often, or else it becomes kind of cheap. And you also have to have buy-in from the players. Or else the player's going to be like, nope, I keep adventuring. Adventuring's my favorite thing to do.
Yep, Arthur.
Yeah, you can't really tempt him from his main quest.
But you can scare him.
With one thing.
Memories.
With memories. The meeting with the goddess is just you're given a boon or items. So that's going to be like when, I don't know, one of your allies gives you the sword of beam slaying. So that when you have to fight the BBEG and he fires his death beam at you, you can kill the beam.
So I thought you said bean.
So I was going to originally say bean and then it turned into beam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sword of bean slaying so the hero can cook perfect meals.
Bean slaying so that the hero can cut the beanstalk before the giant comes down. And then, really, Atonement with the Father/Abyss is a weird one from Campbell, but usually it's confronting whatever holds the ultimate power. So that's going to be literally in Star Wars, I am your father. But it's confronting essentially the BBEG, which is kind of just labeled as the ordeal in the newer one, which makes sense. But to put that into your story is probably just going to be fighting the BBEG.
Yeah.
The ordeal is finishing the quest. You don't need something fancy. You don't need this huge emotional, revelation.
Did you skip Approach to the Inmost Cave?
I did. We're going to circle back to that real quick.
Oh, okay.
Approach to the Inmost Cave, because you mentioned it, is going to be reaching your emotional low point in the story, and also probably giving your characters just a moment to breathe, to humanize. But this is going to be you're at your peak of suspense, you reach the lowest point. In a lot of stories, this is also where you get the belly of the whale, but we'll circle back to that because that's a step that we didn't really cover earlier. But this is going to be your emotional low point, the stakes are the highest they've ever been, and you typically also here give your characters a moment to talk, to humanize each other. There's this moment of connection right before the big ordeal.
Like in BG3, you have to decide what mind player is going with you into the end.
Mm-hmm. Or in BG3 when you're in the high hall and all your allies are there.
Or in BG3.
Or in BG3. Or in BG3. So, yeah. We did briefly mention Belly of the Whale there. You get a lot of Belly of the Whale right before the ordeal in modern media. But honestly, Belly of the Whale can either be done right before crossing the threshold, or I'd say right after crossing the first threshold. Because Belly of the Whale is when your character is at their lowest point emotionally. They feel like the world is too much for them, and they can't really change the world. It's a moment of hopelessness that if if we can see the character overcome that, that's going to really rally everyone. So in TTRPG situations, that's going to be like there's too hard of an encounter, or there's like some moment where the party like sees the BBEG just like wipe a town off the map. Mm-hmm. And the party is at their lowest.
Like in Die Hard 2, when that guy makes a plane crash.
Right. Actually, that is pretty good. That is a good comparison, because in that moment, main character of Die Hard, John McClane. Yeah. John McClane is out on the runway trying his hardest to save this plane. He has come up with a plan. He is trying. The suspense is building. We see this entire long sequence is just suspense is building and building and building. There is this, like, we see he has lowered the flight path. We see him call the bad guy call the plane and tell the plane to land. We see all these things leading up. There's this brief moment of hope as John McClane lights the two things and swing them back and forth, and we see the plane come in and fireball. Plane crashes. All hope is lost. We are at an emotional low point, and at that moment it feels like there is nothing our heroes can do to possibly save this. But seeing John McClane not give up, and in fact strengthen his resolve, strengthens the audience's resolve. And having that moment in a TTRPG, giving slight hope when the party has lost all hope. And this, of course, requires buy-in from the players. Everything we're saying requires a lot of buy-in.
Dungeons & Dragons requires buy-in from the players.
Yeah. If you can pull that off, that's going to be a moment your players remember for a long time. You see this a lot where, like, players are at, like, 10 health. They're in a fight. They're badly injured. Everyone's out of spell slots. And sometimes it comes down to the dice to provide this. Like, the barbarian who's rolling death saves rolls an nat 20, pops back up with 1 hit point.
Like in Critical Role, when Jester manages to cast that spell on the hag, and it all came down to the dice.
Mm-hmm. Really, your dice can surprisingly fluctuate how things resolve. But I think we're going to talk about resolving story beats on a later episode. The reward of the hero's journey. Do we really need to explain this one? It's the reward.
Gold.
Gold. The MacGuffin. The elixir.
Being king now.
Then you start the road back, which is, once again, the road back. There's maybe a couple trials and tribulations on the road back, but a lot of times this is just going to be humanizing moments. Your characters have overcome a difficult trial. This is I think the term is like denouement.
Yes, that is the term.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what that term actually means.
Denouement is the final part of a play or story. If you look at, like, you know, like how they have that, like, little curve, that plot curve thingy?
Yeah.
It's the downward part.
Yeah.
It's where you start tying up all the loose ends.
Yeah. So the road back is going to be the denouement. It's going to be just heading back, tying up loose ends, usually some interaction between the players about what comes next. Yeah. The resurrection, that's just going to be your heroes returning back to the ordinary world. Returning back to the world they knew. If you want to be real cheesy about it, they return to the tavern that they started at, and everyone's like, hey! And lift up their flagons of ale.
And people are like, how did you do it? And your players are like, the power of friendship.
And also this crossbow I found.
Yeah.
The power of friendship and undescribable violence.
Those things go hand in hand, as I've learned.
And the last and final step, return with the elixir. This is, you return in the resurrection, but returning with the elixir is resolving the issues that brought you to the supernatural world anyways. That brought you to the supernatural world in the first place. Returning with the elixir. Returning with the elixir is the sign that things are solved. This is returning with the true crown of King Oligarch and placing it upon the head of the heir such that the kingdom can be made whole again. It is literally returning with the elixir to cure the town of the plague set upon it by dark necromancer Carl.
It's killing the elder brain.
It's killing the elder brain. Although you do have a lot of kind of returning with the elixir during the final scene.
Yeah.
Spoiler alerts for Baldur's Gate 3. There's a lot of like returning with the elixir and like providing these solutions to people.
Yeah. It's it's when you deal with the Frost Maiden and Rima the Frost.
Well, it's more returning to the town and seeing that they're no longer plagued by harsh weather.
It's the aftermath of dealing with the Frost Maiden.
It's part of the denouement, and it's seeing the final, culmination of your work.
It's the party in BG3.
It's the epilogue, which... Once again, you can apply all of these, you can apply none of these, you can apply some of these. We covered how to apply these steps, and we covered that some of them can be skipped. Like Refusal of the Call, you can probably skip. Meeting with the Mentor, if your players know what they're doing, you can probably skip that. Approach the Inmost Cave requires emotional buy-in, you might have to skip that. The Road Back, the Resurrection, and Return with the Elixir, you can crunch them down, you can expand them out, you can do whatever you want with them. Some players want to immediately, after you kill the big bad, have the bigger badder show up.
Big Bad Phase 2.
Big Bad Phase 2. The huge evil rather than the big bad.
Exactly.
Yeah, although it's big bad evil guy, so the huge mean evil guy.
More like the huge mean nefarious man.
Hell yeah. 2024, BBEG out. HMNF in. Huge mean nefarious fella. So that's how to apply those. I guess we're skipping Max's Monster Minute.
No, I don't have a monster picked out, though.
Well, let me go on a quest, on a hero's journey.
We should talk about hippos with guns. Yeah.
Cool, that means I need... No, I do not need that. I need... Where's the Mordenkainen Presents? There you go. Mordenkainen Presents! There you go.
Talking about GIFs.
Heroes with guns! Or possibly GIFs.
There's 2 Fs, so pronounce it however you wish. I chose this monster to talk about simply to spite one specific person who will never listen to this podcast.
Yay!
Don't tell me guns don't exist in Dungeons & Dragons, and that there are no guns in Dungeons & Dragons, when there are GIFs. Hippos with guns. That is what they are. They're described as 7-foot-tall, hippopotamus-headed people. And muskets and grenades are the specialties of many GIF regiments.
So they're known for traveling space. They're known for Spelljammer traveling through wild space aboard ships that have gigantic cannons. I'm talking 50% of the ship is big cannon out the front, baby.
The bigger the boom, the brighter the flash, and the thicker the smoke it produces, the greater the glory for the one wielding the weapon.
Right there.
Yep.
I think the first 3 paragraphs are the same in both these.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just comparing notes. Interesting. They have gunpowder.
Yep. They have gunpowder, they have guns. They are known for carrying entire barrels of gunpowder with them. They're space mercenaries with hippo heads, and they're extremely militaristic. Now, tactics-wise, they're militaristic. They know what they're doing. One of the interesting things they'll do is if they are firing at an enemy that is far enough away that they would have disadvantage on the attack, they drop prone to do so. Because firing on an enemy far enough that you have disadvantage isn't affected if you go prone, right? You have disadvantage. You don't get double disadvantage. You just have disadvantage. But an enemy firing on you, if you're prone, range attacks have disadvantage.
If the enemy is already far enough away that disadvantage with your ranged weapon applies, wouldn't that enemy also already have disadvantage?
No, because longbows have really good range. The range on a gift's weapons are only 40 feet.
40, 120.
120 is the disadvantage range.
What's the 40?
That's the not disadvantage range. If they're within 40 feet and closer, normal. Beyond 40 feet, out to 120 feet, disadvantage.
They can throw up to 60 feet. They have grenades.
Right, but they're expecting enemies to be firing back on them.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, yeah, put GIFs into your story.
Put GIFs just because they're fun. If you want cooler GIFs than just the normal Mordenkainens, in Boo's Astral Menagerie, they have GIF Shock Trooper, which is guy in full plate armor wielding sword and gun, and has fucking bandolier of grenades. And then GIF Warlord, which is an even cooler plate armor, wielding big ass Morningstar and double barrel shotgun.
Yeah. They're cool as hell.
They're cool as hell. They're big, they're strong, they're cool as hell.
They're
and
big,
they're very
they're
smart.
strong, and they're Something that rhymes with strong.
And if you want to put guns in your campaign, go ahead. There's rules for it in the back of the DMG. There's rules for learning new weapons, so you can in fact have one of your players train and learn how to use guns. Artificers get firearm proficiency, and GIF players from Spelljammer books also automatically have firearm proficiency. So there's rules for it.
Pick your poison, 1, 2, or 3.
3.
Okay. It's this one.
Quizbo!
I'm gonna use 1 and 2 to actually hide the answers so I
Nice.
can hold it to read it. Okay.
I love the implication that I'm just going to try to read the answers off the back of the card.
Okay. So this first one is especially for you.
Because I care about the sanctity of this quiz. I'm not going to cheat, even if you don't have those cards there.
Considering all the books you have not been reading,
Yes.
I have picked this specific question
Uh-huh.
for you. What famous muscle-bound actor appeared on the front covers of the D&D adventure modules coded CB1 and CB2?
Muscle-covered actor?
Yes.
Oh. So it's just a dude.
Yeah.
Is it Arnold
Arnold who?
Schwarzenegger?
Yes. What character was he dressed up as?
Conan the Barbarian.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger as the character of Conan the Barbarian.
Hell yeah. For those books I haven't been reading.
Yep. Okay. What is the duration of the spell Disguise Self?
So, durations in D&D fall into a couple categories. You have instantaneous, you have 1 minute, you have 10 minutes, you have an hour, you have 8 hours, you have 24 hours, and then you have, like, until dispel. I'm Disguise Self, you said?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with 1 hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Dragon magazine moved away from print to its current online form, what name did it take on?
I should know this because I think they still have the articles being published on Wizard of the Coast. I think it's just like Dragon Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. What is that? 3 for 3?
Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide which of the 3 questions left I want to do and which 2 I want to save for the bonus.
Yeah, just so you're aware, bonus questions for the Patreons. The Patreon patrons. The patrons of the Golden Wheel Tavern.
So I'm gonna choose this question to make you look good for our non-patron listeners.
Okay.
On which plane of existence do Githyanki dwell?
They exist in the astral plane.
That is correct.
Them and the Githrazai. But actually, Githrazai exists in Limbo, not the astral plane.
I do like that they mentioned the Githrazai in the At Wither's party.
You can also find a cipher disc on them in the crash. So they're mentioned, which is nice. So that's 4 for 4 for the quiz. Hope you all did just as well at home.
Wendy's 4 for 4.
At a Wendy's 4 for 4. You do not win one of those unless you pay $4 to yourself and go buy one.
Or you can pay $20 to us and we'll go get one for you, depending on where you are.
We'll go get one for you and then eat it for you.
We'll get one for you, and if you're close enough, eat it for you.
Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you who does listen. If you could give us a signal boost wherever you are, we'd appreciate it. You know, like us, follow us, whatever. Speaking of following and liking us, check us out. Check out our social medias. We have Twitter, we have Tumblr, we have TikTok. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/The Tavern Keeps Guide. It's The Tavern Keeps Guide everywhere else, like Twitter at The Tavern Keeps Guide, Tumblr, The Tavern Keeps Guide. There's a secret second blog to The Tavern Keeps Guide on Tumblr, but it doesn't post very often. Neither does the real one. Yeah, Twitter, Tumblr, Patreon, TikTok at The Tavern Keeps Guide. That one, very occasionally do we post videos, but there might be some more before this episode goes up.
Which isn't helpful to you listeners.
Not at all, but if you see them and you watch this episode, you could be like, hey, I know what videos they're talking about. And then, you know, if you are one of those people who got off Twitter when you should have, and you switched to Mastodon, specifically the Dice.camp instance, because that's the TTRPG one, we're also there at The Tavern Keeps Guide. So follow us, like us, share our posts if you want. We appreciate it very much. If you join the Patreon, you get exclusive content. You get the Patreon Patreon cut, which includes a cold intro, cold outro, and any sort of sidebars I decided to cut because I'm a cruel and capricious editor.
Our intros and outros are absolutely freezing on our Patreon.
Yep, the coldest intros you've ever seen. Anyways, speaking of cold, stay warm out there. We appreciate every one of you. And as always, make sure to tip the barmaids.